First Contact Protocol. Dr. Zilnak's dorsal vents released a controlled burst of heated air as he reviewed the preliminary data for the third time. The readings couldn't be correct. According to every established model of civilizational development, the species on the third planet should have destroyed themselves centuries ago. Computer, verify atmospheric composition analysis of human combat training facilities, he chittered into his neural interface. The holographic display shimmered before him, casting his gray-scaled skin in a soft blue glow. Analysis verified. Primary components, nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide, and traces of human pheromones associated with aggression and enjoyment. That was precisely what bothered him. The humans were enjoying their combat training. Not just tolerating it as a necessary evil, like most species, but actively seeking it out. Their entertainment channels were filled with simulated combat, their history preserved through tales of warfare, and yet, they hadn't annihilated themselves. Zakar, I require your insight, Zilnak transmitted to his superior. Within moments, the door to his research pod dilated, and the imposing form of senior researcher Zakar floated in. Unlike Zilnak's species, the Trillian had evolved past the need for physical appendages, their powerful psychic abilities allowing them to manipulate their environment directly. Your distress signal was quite urgent, researcher Zilnak. Zakar's thoughts resonated in Zilnak's mind. Have you found something concerning about the humans? Zilnak gestured to the holographic display, where footage from various human military installations played simultaneously. They're impossible. By every metric we have, they should be extinct. Look at this facility they call a UFC training center. They willingly engage in physical combat for entertainment, deliberately causing injury to each other. And here, he switched to another feed, their Olympic training facility, where they compete in simulated warfare across dozens of disciplines. Zakar's crystalline form pulsed with interest. And yet they advance. Tell me, what is their current technological level? That's another anomaly. Zilnak pulled up a new set of data. They've achieved rudimentary space flight, begun terraforming their fourth planet, and developed quantum computing. But their military technology. He paused, his dorsal vents whistling softly. It's as if they've poured every spare resource into finding new ways to fight. Show me. The display shifted to show human military hardware. Aircraft carriers, stealth bombers, main battle tanks, and orbital defense platforms. But what caught Zakar's attention were the training simulations. They practice combat scenarios endlessly, Zilnak explained. Not just their dedicated warriors, but even their civilian population engages in combat simulations through what they call video games. Their children begin training in competitive physical combat as young as 4 years old through activities they call sports. Zakar's form brightened considerably. And their casualty rates from these activities? Surprisingly low. They've developed extensive medical knowledge specifically to treat combat injuries. Their warriors often return to fighting even after severe wounds that would permanently disable most species. The senior researcher remained silent for several moments, processing this information. When he finally spoke, his thoughts carried an weight that made Zilnak's defensive scales bristle. The Keth Empire advances. Our latest intelligence suggests they will breach our outer defensive line within 5 cycles. The Nikil Empire's greatest weakness has always been our lack of a true warrior race. We are researchers, diplomats, and builders, but we are not fighters. Zilnak's primary heart nearly stopped. Surely you're not suggesting. Prepare a first contact protocol. But not our standard approach. Zakar's form pulsed with determination. We're not looking to elevate another species of researchers or diplomats. We need warriors. But they're savages. Zilnak protested. They still fight with their bare appendages. They deliberately seek out conflict. Their entertainment is based around. Exactly, Zakar interrupted. They are what we need them to be. But more importantly, they've achieved something no other warrior race has managed: they've channeled their violent nature into progress rather than self-destruction. Zilnak's secondary heart joined his primary in arrhythmic protest. The Council will never approve direct contact. The regulations clearly state. The regulations were written by researchers and diplomats. Zakar's thoughts carried a hint of amusement. Perhaps it's time we let warriors help us write new ones. As if to emphasize his point, the holographic display showed a human military unit executing a complex training maneuver. Their movements were precise, coordinated, and displayed a level of unit cohesion that even the Keth struggled to achieve. "Begin preparations," Zakar commanded. "But first, I want to understand everything about their military structure. How do they select their warriors? How do they train them? And most importantly," his form pulsed with intense curiosity, "how have they managed to maintain their warrior nature while building a functioning civilization?" Zilnak's dorsal vents released another burst of heated air as he began compiling the requested data. He had a sinking feeling that the galaxy was about to change dramatically, and he wasn't sure if it would be for the better. But as he watched more footage of human military exercises, a strange thought occurred to him. These humans, as violent and primitive as they seemed, displayed something he'd never seen in other warrior races: restraint. They had rules for their combat, ethics in their warfare, and most surprisingly, they showed mercy to their defeated opponents. Perhaps, just perhaps, they weren't the savages he initially thought them to be. Perhaps they were something entirely new: warriors with wisdom, fighters with philosophy, soldiers with souls. The real question was, would that make them more or less dangerous? The integration crisis. Admiral Sarah Chen stood before the United Nations Security Council, her weathered hands gripping the podium as she delivered what might be the most important military briefing in human history. The room was dead silent, save for the soft whir of air conditioning and the occasional nervous shuffle of papers. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment, 12 hours ago, we received first contact from an advanced alien civilization known as the Nikil Empire. Their message was unexpected. The holographic display behind her flickered to life, showing the alien transmission that had been broadcasted simultaneously to every military command center on Earth. The gathered diplomats watched as a crystalline being that called itself Zakar made their proposition. "They don't want our resources," Admiral Chen continued. "They don't want our territory. They want our soldiers. All of them." The room erupted in a cacophony of voices before Security Council President Thompson managed to restore order. "Admiral, are you suggesting these aliens want to recruit our military?" "Not just our active military," Chen replied, switching to the next slide. "They want to integrate our entire warrior culture into their empire. Every soldier, every veteran, every martial artist, every competitive athlete. They're offering us technology centuries beyond our current capabilities in exchange for becoming their dedicated warrior class." The Chinese representative leaned forward. "And what makes them think we would agree to this conscription?" Admiral Chen's expression hardened. "Because without their help, humanity might not survive the next decade." She switched to another slide, showing a different alien species, a massive, insectoid race with multiple compound eyes and armored carapaces. "This is the Keth Empire. According to the Nikil, they're expanding aggressively through this sector of space. They don't negotiate, they don't take prisoners, and they're heading in our direction." The room fell silent again as the implications sank in. Sergeant Major James "Tank" Rodriguez watched the alien ship land in the New Mexico desert with a mix of awe and professional scrutiny. As the head combat instructor for the U.S. Army's Advanced Warfare Center, he'd been selected to lead one of the first integration training programs between human and Nikil forces. The ship's hull split open like a blooming flower, revealing their new allies. Rodriguez had been briefed on the various species that made up the Nikil Empire, but seeing them in person was something else entirely. The research specialist, Zilnak, looked like a cross between a salamander and a steam locomotive, with those bizarre vents along his back. The Trillion commander, Zakar, was basically a floating crystal with psychic powers. And then there were the others, species with features ranging from avian to almost plant-like. "Welcome to Earth," Rodriguez said, stepping forward. "We're ready to begin integration training whenever you are." Zilnak's dorsal vents released a burst of steam that Rodriguez was starting to recognize as their version of a sigh. "We have prepared extensive protocols for elevating primitive. Developing species into our military structure." Rodriguez grinned. "Great. We've prepared some protocols of our own." He gestured to the training ground behind him, where hundreds of soldiers from various military branches and nations were assembled. "We figured the best way to integrate would be to show you how we train, then adapt our methods to your technology." That's not how this works," Zilnak protested. "We have established procedures." "Tank," a voice called out from the ship. A human woman in combat fatigues emerged, grinning widely. "You've got to see this stuff. Their targeting systems are amazing, but wait until you see what we did to them." Rodriguez recognized Captain Sarah Martinez, one of the first human officers to be sent up to the Nikil ships for evaluation. The alien researcher's vents released another burst of steam as Martinez bounded down the ramp, carrying what looked like a heavily modified alien weapon. "What did you do to our standard-issue plasma rifle?" Zilnak asked, his scales shifting to a lighter shade. "Oh man, you're gonna love this," Martinez said, shouldering the weapon. "So we noticed the targeting system was separate from the main unit, right? Complete waste of space. So we integrated it into the armor's neural interface, mounted the whole thing on a swivel system on the shoulder, and now." She looked at a target drone, and the weapon moved independently, tracking her eye movement. Hands-free operation with perfect accuracy. Plus, we can still grab it if we need manual control. Rodriguez watched Zilnak's reaction with amusement. The alien researcher looked like he was about to have some sort of steam-powered aneurysm. That's not, you can't just." Zilnak sputtered. "Oh, and wait until you see what we did with the ship's acceleration compensators," Martinez continued, either oblivious to or deliberately ignoring the researcher's distress. "Turns out if you bypassed the safety protocols." "You did what?" Zilnak's voice rose to a pitch Rodriguez hadn't thought possible for the species. "Relax," Martinez said, patting the alien on what approximated a shoulder, causing another burst of steam. "We only disabled them in the training vessels. The kids love it, we're calling it the Space Coaster. Great for building G-force tolerance." "The children?" Zilnak seemed to be having trouble processing this information. Rodriguez decided to step in before the poor researcher blew a gasket. "Look, we understand you have your protocols. But humans, we learn by doing, by pushing boundaries, by finding new ways to use the tools we're given. If you want us as your warriors, you need to let us do this our way." Zakar, who had been silently observing the exchange, floated forward. His crystalline form pulsed with what Rodriguez was learning to recognize as amusement. "Researcher Zilnak, perhaps we should observe their methods before insisting on our own. After all, is not adaptation one of the core principles of the Empire?" But. Zilnak looked between the modified weapon, the grinning human captain, and the hundreds of soldiers waiting to begin training. His vents released one final, resigned puff of steam. "Very well. Show us your methods." Rodriguez's grin widened. "All right people, let's show our new friends how Earth does business. First up, close quarters combat integration with powered armor." As the training began, Rodriguez couldn't help but notice how the alien observers reacted to human combat methods. The researchers like Zilnak seemed horrified by the controlled violence, while the more military-minded aliens watched with increasing interest. But it was Zakar's reaction that really caught his attention. The crystalline being observed everything with an intensity that suggested he wasn't just seeing humanity's potential as warriors, he was seeing something else entirely. Later that night, as Rodriguez reviewed the day's training footage, he received a message from Martinez up on the Nikil ships. "You won't believe what we just figured out about their FTL drives. How do you feel about illegal street racing, in space?" Rodriguez laughed, shaking his head. The galaxy wasn't ready for humanity, but ready or not, here they came. Evolution of war. High Admiral Keth of the Keth Empire crushed the holographic projector in one of his 4 hands, mandibles clicking in frustration. The scout ship's footage played in his mind again, Nikil Empire vessels performing maneuvers that should have been impossible, executing combat patterns his tactical computers couldn't even analyze. "Explain," he growled at the trembling tactical officer. "High Admiral," the officer's antennae twitched nervously, "we believe they've recruited a new warrior race. The energy signatures and combat patterns don't match anything in our database." Keth's compound eyes shifted, focusing on the tactical display where the last known positions of Nikil forces were marked. "A new race? Impossible. We've catalogued every viable warrior species in this sector. Who could they have possibly found?" The officer's chitinous armor rattled slightly. We don't know, sir. But the transmissions we've intercepted refer to them as humans." Captain Sarah Martinez stood in the newly christened Innovation Hub aboard the Nikil flagship, surrounded by holographic displays showing various military projects in development. What had started as unauthorized modifications to alien tech had evolved into an official research and development program, with humans and aliens working together to revolutionize warfare. "All right people, status updates," she called out. "Dr. Kumar, how's Project Normandy coming along?" A holographic window expanded, showing an Indian scientist standing next to what looked like a modified Nikil stealth system. "Revolutionary breakthrough, Captain. By combining the Nikil's phase shift technology with our understanding of radar absorption materials, we've created a stealth system that can make a capital ship as invisible as a fighter. We're calling it the Shadow Protocol." "Outstanding," Martinez grinned. "Lieutenant Wong, what about the Valkyrie program?" Another window enlarged, showing a test chamber where powered armor suits were executing complex aerial maneuvers. "Better than expected, ma'am. By integrating gravtech into standard combat armor and applying principles from human extreme sports, we've created units that can perform zero-G combat with unprecedented accuracy. The alien metals allow for much more durability than Earth materials, so we've been able to push the limits of what's possible." "Excellent. And Dr. Rodriguez?" She turned to where her old friend Tank was working with a team of both human and alien engineers. "Oh, you're gonna love this," Rodriguez's face lit up with boyish enthusiasm despite his gray hair. "Remember how the Nikil ships used psychic interfaces for navigation? Well, we found out human brains are actually pretty good at handling multiple spatial dimensions. We've modified their neural link technology to create what we're calling the battle mind system." He gestured to a simulator where a human pilot sat in what looked like a meditation pose, surrounded by holographic displays. Instead of just controlling one ship, a properly trained pilot can mentally coordinate an entire wolf pack of drone fighters. We're seeing engagement success rates that are off the charts. Zilnak, who had somehow become the unofficial alien liaison to these human innovation projects, released a burst of steam from his vents. "The energy requirements for such a system would be already solved," interrupted Dr. Patel, one of the human physicists. "We reversed engineered your fusion cores and found a way to increase efficiency by 300% by applying principles from tokamak reactor design. The Keth won't know what hit them." Martinez watched as more projects were discussed, new weapon systems, tactical innovations, even modifications to the FTL drives that made their ships more maneuverable in battle. But what struck her most was how the aliens were starting to adapt to human methods. A young Trillian researcher was excitedly discussing improvements to their psychic barriers based on human martial arts principles. A Prel engineer had incorporated human sports psychology into their training programs. Even Zilnak, for all his initial resistance, was now leading a project to improve combat medical technology using a combination of alien regeneration techniques and human battlefield medicine. "Captain," a voice called out. Martinez turned to see Admiral Chen entering the innovation hub. "We just received word. The Keth have begun their push toward the Nikil border worlds. They're moving faster than anticipated." The room fell silent. Martinez looked around at the projects, the prototypes, the innovations. "How long do we have?" 3 weeks, maybe less." Martinez straightened her uniform. "Then we'd better make them count. All teams, begin immediate combat preparation protocols. Everything we've developed, everything we've learned, it's time to put it to the test." As the hub erupted into focused activity, Martinez caught sight of Zakar observing from his usual spot near the ceiling. The crystalline being's form pulsed with an emotion she'd learned to recognize as satisfaction. "You knew, didn't you?" she asked quietly. "You knew we'd do more than just fight for you. You knew we'd change everything." Zakar's thoughts echoed in her mind. "We needed warriors, yes. But what we truly needed was human innovation, human creativity, human adaptability. You see problems and imagine solutions no other species would consider. You take risks that would terrify others. You turn games into training and training into games. You make the impossible possible simply because no one told you it couldn't be done. And now." Martinez gestured to the organized chaos around them as humans and aliens worked together, preparing for war. "Now," Zakar's form brightened, "we find out if it's enough. The Keth are the greatest warrior race we've ever encountered. They've conquered dozens of worlds, destroyed countless civilizations. They believe themselves invincible." Martinez smiled grimly. "Yeah, well, humanity has a pretty good track record of proving invincible enemies wrong. Stick around, you're about to see why." As if to emphasize her point, a massive explosion rocked one of the testing chambers, followed by cheering and someone shouting, "That's not supposed to do that, but it's awesome." Zilnak's vents released another burst of steam. "I'll get the fire suppression systems." "No wait," called out Dr. Kumar's voice. "We might be onto something here. Quick, someone record these readings." Martinez laughed. In 3 months, humans had completely transformed how the Nikil Empire approached warfare. In 3 weeks, they'd show the Keth Empire exactly what that meant. The galaxy was about to learn a valuable lesson: never underestimate humanity's capacity for innovation, especially when it comes to finding new ways to win a fight. First strike. The Keth invasion fleet dropped out of FTL in perfect attack formation above Norak, their massive ships casting shadows over the Nikil colony world. High Admiral Kexri stood on his command deck, mandibles clicking in anticipation. The planet's defensive fleet was pathetically small, just 3 frigates and what appeared to be a modified carrier of some kind. "Status of enemy forces," he demanded. His tactical officers' antennae twitched in confusion. "Unusual energy readings, High Admiral. Their ships are dancing." "What?" Kexri's compound eyes focused on the tactical display. The Nikil ships were indeed moving in strange patterns, weaving and spinning in ways that seemed to defy both physics and common sense. "It's a trick. Begin the attack pattern. Show these humans what real warriors." The rest of his order was cut off as alarms blared across the bridge. Multiple ships suddenly appeared behind his fleet, emerging from what should have been empty space. "Impossible," he roared. "Our sensors showed nothing." Shadow protocol engaged, a human voice broadcast across all frequencies. "Wolf packs, you are weapons free. Happy hunting." The space around Norak erupted into chaos. Captain Martinez watched from the bridge of the NSS Thermopylae as Operation Trojan Horse unfolded. The Keth had taken the bait, focusing on the seemingly vulnerable colony while the main Humanikil fleet lay in wait, hidden by the new stealth systems. "All battle mind operators, status report," she commanded. One by one, the reports came in from the meditation chambers where human pilots controlled swarms of drone fighters through the neural interface system. Wolf Pack Alpha, engaging. Wolf Pack Beta, on target. Wolf Pack Charlie, beginning attack run. The tactical display showed hundreds of drone fighters emerging from their carrier vessels, moving with impossible coordination as their human controllers directed them through the psychic interface. Each wolf pack operated as a single organism, overwhelming Keth point defense systems through sheer complexity of movement. "They're adapting," reported Lieutenant Wong from his station. "Keth fighters are launching to intercept." Martinez smiled grimly. "Deploy the Valkyries." From the Thermopolis launch bays, squads of powered armor troops shot into space. The new Gravtech suits allowed them to move in 3 dimensions with the same ease as atmosphere-bound fighters, while their integrated weapon systems made them lethal at both range and close quarters. "This is Valkyrie Lead," Rodriguez's voice crackled over the comm. Despite his age, he'd insisted on leading the first space-to-space boarding action in human history. "Beginning infiltration run on their command ship." Martinez watched as the Valkyrie teams used the chaos of the drone battle as cover, approaching the massive Keth vessels while their point defense systems were overwhelmed. The powered armor suits were barely larger than space debris, nearly impossible to target in the midst of battle. "Warning!" Zilnak's voice cut through the command channel. "Keth reinforcements detected. 3 heavy cruiser squadrons incoming." "Right on schedule," Martinez grinned. "Dr. Kumar, if you would do the honors." "Shadow Protocol Mark II engaging," the scientist reported. "Deploying quantum mines, now." The space between the battle and the approaching Keth reinforcements lit up as hundreds of previously invisible mines activated. The Keth ships, traveling at combat speed, had no time to react. Several cruisers were immediately disabled, while others were forced to make emergency maneuvers that disrupted their formation. Incredible, Zilnak's dorsal vents released a burst of steam that might have been excitement. The quantum configuration of the mines made them completely undetectable until activation. "Yeah, we basically combined your phase shift tech with good old-fashioned C-mine principles," Martinez explained. "Speaking of old-fashioned. Tank, how's the boarding action going?" Rodriguez's response was punctuated by the sound of plasma fire. "Making progress. These Keth are tough bastards, but they've never dealt with CQC specialists in powered armor before. Plus, their internal defenses are all designed to repel boarders coming through airlocks. They never expected us to cut our own doors." Martinez watched as the tactical display showed Rodriguez's team literally carving their way through the Keth command ship's hull, using modified mining tools that Dr. Kumar's team had developed specifically for this purpose. "High Admiral," one of the bridge officers called out. "The Keth are trying to regroup. They're forming a defensive sphere around their command ship." "Perfect." Martinez opened a channel to all ships. "All forces, execute Operation Leonidas." The human-modified Nikil ships moved with precision that would have been impossible just months ago. The improvements to their drives, combined with human tactical doctrine, allowed them to perform maneuvers that looked more like a choreographed dance than a space battle. The Keth found themselves caught in a 3-dimensional version of an ancient human battle strategy, the hammer and anvil. The visible Nikil fleet pressed them from one side while the stealth ships decloaked on the other, catching the Keth forces in a deadly crossfire. "Captain." Rodriguez's voice crackled through the comm, "We've reached their bridge, but the High Admiral, he's something else. We need backup." Martinez was already moving. "Commander Chen, you have the bridge. Zilnak, with me. Time to test out that battlefield medical system of yours." As she rushed to the launch bay where a Valkyrie suit waited, Martinez couldn't help but smile. The Keth had expected to face the same old Nikil Empire, researchers and diplomats playing at war. Instead, they got humanity in all its creative, adaptive, impossible glory. The battle for Norak wasn't over yet, but it was already clear, the galaxy would never be the same. The nature of victory. High Admiral Kexri stood amid the chaos of his burning bridge, for arms wielding different weapons as he faced down the human boarding party. Behind his massive form, the remaining bridge crew worked frantically to restore control to their crippled command ship. "You fight well, humans," he growled, mandibles clicking in what might have been appreciation. "But you cannot defeat the Keth Empire. We are the ultimate warriors of the galaxy." Sergeant Major Rodriguez, his Valkyrie armor scorched and dented, kept his weapon trained on the Keth commander. "You know what your problem is? You think being a warrior is just about fighting." Before Kexri could respond, something burst through the ceiling of the bridge. Captain Martinez's Valkyrie suit landed in a three-point stance, steam rising from its modified thrusters. Behind her, Zilnak emerged from the hole, his medical drones hovering around him like mechanical insects. "Status, tank?" Martinez asked, never taking her eyes off the Keth High Admiral. "Stubborn bastard won't surrender," Rodriguez replied. "Lost 2 good people trying to take him alive." Martinez's helmet retracted, showing her face to the alien commander. "Last chance, High Admiral. Your fleet is in ruins, your reinforcements are scattered, and we've already transmitted the footage of this battle to every world in Keth space. Surrender, and we can end this without any more bloodshed." Kexri's compound eyes shifted, taking in the scene around him. You're offering mercy. After we attacked your worlds? Killed your people? That is not the warrior's way. "That's where you're wrong," Martinez said, her voice firm but not unkind. "Being a warrior isn't just about knowing how to fight. It's about knowing when not to fight. It's about protecting others, about standing up for what's right, and yes, sometimes it's about showing mercy to a defeated enemy." "She's right," Rodriguez added, his own helmet retracting. "Back on Earth, some of our greatest warriors were also teachers, healers, builders. The best fighters I ever knew were the ones who understood that victory doesn't always mean destruction." Zilnak's dorsal vents released a thoughtful burst of steam. "Perhaps this is why we were wrong about humanity. We thought we were getting simple warriors, but instead we found something more." The bridge fell silent except for the crackle of electrical fires and the hum of emergency systems. Kexri looked from human to human, then to Zilnak, his alien features unreadable. "Your weapons," he said finally. "The way you fight. It's unlike anything we've ever encountered. How did you develop such tactics?" Martinez smiled. "We didn't just develop tactics. We played games. We told stories. We turned warfare into sport and sport into training. We learned to fight not just with our bodies and weapons, but with our minds and hearts. And most importantly, we learned from our mistakes." "Games?" Kexri's mandibles clicked in confusion. "Stories?" "Yeah," Rodriguez grinned. "You should see what our kids did with your fighter designs after watching some old anime series. Those space races we set up. They've produced better pilots than any formal training program. Hell, half our tactical innovations came from people asking, wouldn't it be cool if?" "And that," Zilnak interjected, his scales shifting in what humans had learned was amusement, "is why the Nikil Empire sought out humanity. Not just for their strength in battle, but for their ability to imagine, to innovate, to find joy even in preparation for war." Kexri was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, deliberately, he lowered his weapons. "Perhaps," he said, "the Keth Empire has something to learn from humanity as well." 1 year later. The innovation hub aboard the Nikil flagship had changed. Where once there had been clear divisions between human and alien sections, now the space was thoroughly integrated. Keth engineers worked alongside human scientists, while Trillian researchers debated tactical theory with Earth military strategists. "Still hard to believe sometimes," Martinez said, watching a group of Keth younglings learning human martial arts alongside human children practicing psychic defense techniques with a Trillian instructor. Indeed, Zakar's crystalline form pulsed with satisfaction. When we first discovered Earth, we thought we were finding warriors. Instead, we found teachers. Speaking of teaching, Rodriguez called out from his station, "You won't believe what the cultural exchange program just came up with. The Keth have this traditional battle meditation technique, right? Well, someone had the idea to combine it with yoga." Zilnak's vents released a burst of steam that everyone now recognized as laughter. "And to think, I once believed humans would destroy the Empire with their chaotic innovations. Instead, they have helped us build something greater than we could have imagined." Martinez watched as a human engineer excitedly explained the principles of parkour to a fascinated group of alien military officers. Nearby, a Keth weapons master was demonstrating traditional combat forms while a human martial artist showed how they could be adapted for different body types. "You know what I think," she said, smiling. "I think we were all wrong. The Nikil thought they needed warriors. The Keth thought they had to be conquerors. And humans? We thought we had to choose between being warriors and being civilized. And now?" Zakar asked. "Now we know better. Being a warrior isn't about fighting. It's about protecting. It's about teaching. It's about finding better ways to do things, whether that's winning a battle or preventing one. And sometimes..." She gestured to where a group of mixed-species children were playing what appeared to be a zero-gravity version of Capture the Flag, using modified training versions of their various combat technologies. "Sometimes it's about turning the art of war into something that brings people together instead of tearing them apart." Outside the viewport, Earth was visible as a small blue marble in the distance. Humanity's homeworld had changed too, now hosting a thriving multi-species community and serving as the central training ground for the Empire's new integrated defense forces. The galaxy had indeed changed, but not in the way anyone had expected. The humans hadn't just brought their warrior spirit to the stars, they'd brought their creativity, their adaptability, and most importantly, their ability to find joy and purpose even in the art of war. And that, perhaps, was the greatest victory of all.